All right, dude. Welcome to the podcast. Fun fact, I don't actually have a name for it yet. We're working on it. It's a work in progress, like all things. Um,
Thanks for having me.
it's good to have you. So what I like to admit is that I will butcher your introduction. So instead of giving me the opportunity to butcher it, I would like to bequeath that opportunity onto you. So if you would introduce yourself, so I don't butcher anything about it, and if you butchered, I don't have to feel bad.
Big deal, just put the blame on me.
That's what we do here.
As one of my athletes, I
Blame.
think that's kind of what you would do anyway, you
Shift
know?
blame, 100%. That's what
Oh yeah,
that's the name
you
of the
do well
game.
in the 2K, it's good on you. If you don't do well in 2K, it was the training plan's fault, right?
That's honestly how the greater science works. That's what I've been trying to tell people for a long time.
Yeah. Coaching is a fun job, clearly.
Clearly.
Um, anyway, yeah, so my name's Alex. I'm originally from Scotland. I know John because I lived in Texas for 7 years. Where I moved to Texas for university, and that's actually when I started rowing. So never actually rowed in high school. I played like rugby and field hockey in high school,
Mm.
but wanted to kind of mix things up and still kind of do sports while I was studying. And so I got into rowing. Rowing is a really big sport in the UK. It just didn't have it at my high school, so never got to really do it. So it seemed like a cool experience, and I just completely fell in love with the sport. Um, and then during my junior year, um, COVID hit, which affected all of us. And it kind of shut down rowing. It's one of the sports that kind of got super affected by it. Um, so I had to kind of pivot where I never got to row again, really, for my university and the rest of my junior year and then my senior year. But the junior program at Texas Rowing Center was still running. So I got into coaching and I kind of fell in love with that aspect of rowing and just kind of helping others achieve their performance goals.
Mhm.
And after some time in the UK, I did a bit of volunteer coaching there. I kind of realized I wanted to pursue a career in coaching and rowing coaching specifically. So I moved back to the US. I spent 3 more years at Texas Rowing Center coaching various squads. I kind of coach everyone. Coach from like a 13-year-old kid, like boy, to a 70-year-old woman. So, and everyone in between. So, shout out to Lynette, just saying. I don't know if she'll ever see this, but Lynette, I love you. But yeah, but yeah, so I had a great experience there. And then I've actually recently moved to Canada, where I'm now being the head coach of a club up here. And I also do training plan stuff privately. And I have 3 clients, one of my clients being John, where we're doing some wacky shit. I don't know if we get to swear during this, but now we have. So have fun bleeping that out if you have to.
I shall not continue.
Okay, so yeah, that's kind of just me, It's so that's what 5 years coaching, 8 years in the rowing world. I don't really row much anymore. I kind of injured my hip, um,
You need to have
and
corrective
I
exercises
refuse to
for
get
your
it
hip.
fixed, even though John keeps telling me to get it fixed. But I don't know. Maybe I'm a masochist. I don't know.
Well, tell the truth.
But
Tell them you refuse to do the corrective exercises for your hip. You do not have a
yeah,
hurt hip.
no, I mean, I just need to feel something sometimes. Um,
I can't feel happiness, so I feel the pain of my hip, John, instead of reminding me I'm still alive.
There you go. I mean, but one of the like my hip injury is just a perfect example of just like, no shade at previous coaches I had, but like yeah, especially when you coach big teams, it's hard to sometimes care about the individual. And so I love the fact that when I do private training plans, everything is focused on the individual and you get to really just work on what they need versus kind of what a team needs. But you can still apply that to team stuff, which I think does get lost in the whole team sport element of rowing, is that people kind of just try and yeah, find the average, which really doesn't really help anyone, and kind of just see what happens. But yeah, so my hip injury kind of just, I the best thing for me was, I mean, the reason I think I got my injured hip was because I only rowed one side. So like for anyone who doesn't know with rowing, there's two types of rowing. There's sculling and sweeping. Sculling, you row kind of with both sides, controlling both sides of the boat, and sweeping, you're only controlling one side. And it can create some muscle imbalances. And that's kind of how I injured my hip. So,
Uh,
um,
A, 100%, and B, uh, obviously, I trained some of the athletes that you've coached as well, as far as because I am a strength conditioning coach. I have asked some of our mutual clients to be like, hey, uh, could you just ask your coach if you could row on the other side? And they're like, I should probably do that. And doing that has actually led to some success. Like,
yeah,
uh, I'll say her name, Eileen. She's the best.
we love you,
Eileen,
Eileen.
Eileen was stuck rowing on a one way, and it was causing like essentially her to overwork. She had like tendinosis, in like one of her shoulder blades. And so I was like, just ask her if you can row the other side. She did, and she's like, it feels better, but I know if I don't spend time rowing the other way, the same thing's going to happen on this side. And for anyone who is a chronic same side sweeper, once again, highly recommend, as you said, learn to row the other side because that's how the other client that I just got, a rower and a runner, she fractured her hip from running. Fun fact. Um, Heel striker, when you run, and fun fact, there are arguments for you. There are. You can make an argument for striking with your heel or the ball of your foot based off your methodology or how you're thinking. I will always recommend the ball of the foot because that doesn't you have a little bit more of a spring there for shock absorption, but you want to make contact with your fourth and fifth toe because those have the most shock absorptive properties because those toes have the only bones connected to the heel. For people who heel strike, there's not as much cushion, so each strike is a jolt both to the knee and the hip, which then over time, if you have osteopenia, which is like a loss of like bone density, you have an issue. And this person who was a runner is also a chronic same side sweeper. And so all the issues were accruing on like one hip. And I was like, what if we just did this? Implemented some corrective exercise, changed the running stride, and now they run pain-free faster, by the way, and they're already very fast. Um, and now they're in a better place. And we've done the magic just like that. But saying all that to say, yeah, sweeper, sweep both sides, please.
It's
Say
no
that.
shade at coaches. Like coaches are constantly trying to just eke out performance, right? And that can sometimes mean at the detriment to athletes. And it's just the name of the game is that some coaches they forget about the individual. And it's unfortunate, but it's a mistake I think all coaches have probably made at some point in their coaching career.
Mhm.
Um, but that doesn't mean just because you make that mistake once, doesn't mean you're gonna have to always make that mistake, right? So you learn from it and you adapt.
Get better.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, that's me.
As someone who's been coaching for, I think you said the last 5 to 8 years, do you
Yeah.
feel, I know you said we're doing wacky stuff, but do you feel like you have a unique approach or specialty in the world of rowing? Like, for example, you could have someone who's like a technique savant that is like, I know the exact reason why the bow rig is superior to the stern rig, and here's why. Or you're like, the blade should enter the water at both this angle and this. Like, you just know every technical thing and every biomechanical, physics-oriented thing about the boat and fluid mechanics. Or you could be like John, I'm a data junkie about force output and production. Like, what is your unique approach and how do you view rowing?
About weight, so buckle up. Um, I think there are really good examples. I think Mike Purser, Volker Nolte, they're examples of biomechanic nerds, and I mean that in the most complimentary way possible, right?
Hmm.
Um, who they specialize in rowing through rigging and just like how to rig a boat, and how to kind of measure how efficient you are in the rowing stroke. For me, my background and their backgrounds are in physics and maths and things like that. My background, my undergrad degree was in human behavior and philosophy. Very
Okay.
useful degree. Highly recommend, especially if you want to be a rowing coach. Um, so my whole thing is that rowing being a very, mathy sport, being a very physics oriented sport, biology, law of biomechanics, all this stuff, those aren't my specialties. So my specialties are kind of connecting with people, um, and kind of understanding that, how can I really help this person specifically? Right? And trying to have no stone be unturned, right? Which includes looking at other sports, stuff, you and I are working on is using stuff from weightlifting, right? To see if that can, which is your specialty before rowing, and seeing how that can help your rowing world, right? There's stuff that, like, I'm really big into polarization, right? Which is kind of what was made famous in rowing and not rowing, running and cycling. Um, and just not think, because I guess, because of my background, it's like, I think I have to think different. I was not an Olympic rower. I can't rely on my rowing godly experience to say, like, well, hey, I'm this Olympic guy, listen to me, right? I can't say, like, hey, I know, 1,030,000.5 times some, whatever, right? Just like, I'm not a crazy math nerd. I'm not, I'm not a doctor, right? So my specialty is just connecting with people and understanding that, like, okay, how can we actually look at things and not just bog down on, well, this works for everybody, or this works for this guy, so it's definitely going to work for you, right? Or you didn't do well on this test because you didn't try hard, right? Or you didn't work on this test, and therefore my training plan actually sucks and I need to rip it up, right? It's like, let's collect the data, right? Let's actually understand what's kind of going on and talk about it, right? And actually have like this fluid conversation, right? Because in the coaching world, it's a sport that you do need to know your shit. Um, and because it attracts people who need to know their shit, it leads to a lot of confident, to a degree, arrogant people, right, running things. And, when things go wrong, they kind of, they'll probably make up an or excuse and a reason. So my kind of way of trying to take advantage of that, right, is to be like, okay, like anytime I'm feeling a little arrogant or say like, yeah, I think I know everything, I have to be like, okay, no, that's a bad sign, right? I need to actually think about it. So it's just, I'm actually waiting to see something actually kind of like, okay, what challenges are we facing? So because with every athlete, it's different. It's going to happen at different times, So a lot of my training plans, they'll have like a log, and you fill out a fatigue survey, completely qualitative measure, right? Not something I made. I actually stole it from somebody, right? I stole it from a book I read. But then it's also like, one of my clients, they love writing notes. And so they added notes of like how they were feeling. It's like a diary entry. And I love reading it, right? Because it tells me exactly what's going on. Because if he did a test, and he's a doctor, so when he does like an erg workout or rowing workout of any kind, and he also had like a really bad day at work, guess what? He's not going to perform well, and that's not because the training plan isn't working, right? Shocker, right? It's valuable data that I don't think all coaches see, right? So it's kind of just thinking differently is kind of if we're summarizing what I kind of just said, is just that my specialty is the willingness to kind of think differently,
Mhm.
um, and kind of trying to find advantage wherever you can find it, but mainly focusing on the person and uh, qualitative measures, let's say, as well as the quantitative.
Okay. I mean, obviously, I think you had a lot of good cool points as far as like how what you focus on as a coach and how you focus on it and how you get to focus on like the individual versus the team and your interpersonal viewpoint from your background and how you apply to rowing. All quality stuff, good sir. I did want to ask, it kind of makes me tend to this next question is like as a coach, for I'll give an example for me first. Like as a coach, there are like I still find myself like reading like new studies and going to places to advance my learning and my knowledge. For example, I coach a few masters rowing women. Big shout out to Sharon, Eileen, and Aisha. And they're all going to get faster. And I my background is in strength conditioning, which lets me see and like kind of like understand majority of sports and aspects. And I've done some reading and done some researching on rowing, but I would say it's far from my area of expertise. But I'm always trying to like, how can I broaden my lens of this field? So, for example, like a course that I'm currently trying to take, it's by Stacy Sims, I believe. She's a women's master's rower, and her whole viewpoint, her whole perspective on rowing is women are not tiny men, so they should train differently. And of course, in strength conditioning and in weightlifting, it's essentially said that women are tiny men. Essentially, you don't program for them any differently. So, for example, like we know that your for women, like women have like a higher like working capacity of like their one rep max for like a couple of physiological reasons. So like where a man might be able to get like a heavy triple at 90% of his one rep max as far as lifting concerned, a woman might be able to crank out like 5 to 6 or something crazy like that, right? Um, and once again, that's just it's a slight difference, but all books that I've read as far as like lifting, strength conditioning, so on and so forth, it's yeah, essentially just because there's a genetic difference, we don't necessarily train them very different. Versus this other viewpoint of no, because even though there is a slight difference, that's enough to focus or look at each athlete very differently. So I'm kind of approaching it from a different lens. So I guess saying that all to say, how do you change, broaden, or alter the lens in which you view rowing? Are there courses that you take? Are there books that you've read? Are there conversations with athletes or professionals that you have that you go to that helps keep your viewpoint of your sport both fresh, new, or pliable?
And then I think as of currently, my main thing is I'm currently studying for the CSCS exam.
Hey,
I know
I know
you
a guy.
recommend me I do that, and it's a very strong qualification in strength and conditioning. Very hard exam too. You know, there's a lot of stuff in there, and I really wish I listened harder in high school biology. And let me tell you that. But we try. We hustle and we try. But it's interesting because it's providing background for me, an actual proper understanding where I've developed maybe an understanding the reverse way, right? Like
Mhm.
I've seen it happen. I know the reason why, and then I may know like the small biological reason why, but then it stops, right? And that's how, because I didn't do biology in university, and I kind of stopped it at like a pretty young age in high school too, to be honest. UK high school system, maybe not the best for that. Gave me an out. Didn't like dissecting frogs and stuff. Let's just say that. But anyway, um, so it's kind of just providing that background and then that proper understanding where then you can start to kind of think about other sports and how, I'm getting really into cycling, like Grand Tour cycling. So Tadej
Like,
Pogacar,
like,
Jonas Vingegaard.
like watching the sport. You're not competing in cycling.
No, God, no. I mean, we'll see. I
God,
think
no.
Nah. I mean, I think biking to work is enough. But I mean, it's something that I'm definitely really interested in. I think it's one of the most athletic feats a human body can do.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm going to try track cycling over the winter. Like Canada, it's cold, so there's
Hey,
not much cycling to do. So I'm going to try track cycling. And track cycling is a massively interesting sport
That's the
because
short race, right? It's a very much a sprint, if I
it
remember
can
correctly.
be. It's kind of like sprint cycling, right? Where, it's fixed gear. And they're going like I think like 40 miles an hour. It's kind of like bonkers on a bike. Um, and but there is also long distance track cycling. Such long distance that it might be a 6 minute workout. What is also a 6 minute workout?
2K.
2K rowing, right? So that's really fascinating to me. And I think it's also like, um, I need to look at the actual numbers of how long track cycling can be. But, at 1500 meters, which is what the rowing Olympics will be in LA 2028, will definitely be close to track cycling. So I wonder, especially Netherlands and GB, who are very good at track cycling, I wonder how much they're gonna kind of help their country's rowing team. So something to kind of think about, like if like it goes in that direction. But cyclists, there's a lot of money in cycling. Tour de France especially, and I mean it has a bad reputation, especially with like Lance Armstrong and stuff. But recently, as of what we currently know, the athletes are pretty clean. And the stuff that they're doing, like Tadej Pogacar, he's the number one cyclist in the world, but kind of undisputed and maybe actually the greatest of all time. And he does a shit ton of zone two. And he's winning races where he's kind of like leaving everybody with 100 kilometers to go, which is unheard of. And it's like, well, maybe what he's doing is really smart and we should all copy it. Even though we're not doing Grand Tour cycling, it's still aerobic and aerobic is aerobic, right? So, how can we build those engines? Um, and so it's just, thinking about other sports, I think, is just, I'm following track cycling, following cycling, following, all other sports, is kind of what I do because I just love sports. I love human performance through physical activity. It's fascinating, what the human body can do. And I think it can all be beneficial to rowing for sure.
Hmm. Well, facts on facts, bro. Thank you for sharing like that lens about how you kind of keep yourself pliable within your industry, because I think that's like an important thing that everyone's coach should be some kind of pursuant of lifelong learning.
Mhm.
Um, Something that I find interesting that I like to ask like other professionals is what are some of the biggest obstacles that you face? 'Cause, like, and like once again, just leading by example. Sometimes my biggest obstacle is the fact that like so as yes, strength conditioning coach, but a lot of I do train what I call like Gen Pop, which is like I just want to look good and I want to look good and feel good. And so like that's kind of easy, right? That means I have to dial your nutrition and just have you lift up weights like, 3 to 5 times a week and you'll be okay. A little walking here and there, maybe some zone two if you really want it. Performance is like looking good and performing well are very different animals. Um, and so I just said like, yeah, like look good, feel good. I was like, cool, we have to like take a deep dive in your nutrition and like really dial that in. And then I get but I don't want to track my calories. I was like, well, that is the biggest obstacle that you and I will face on this journey because if we don't know how much you're eating, I don't know where we're gonna go from here. Because if you're trying to lose 20 pounds because you want to see your abs, but you won't show me how much you're eating or you won't figure that out, like your guess is as good as mine. That's like a major obstacle that I face like with my Gen Pop clients. What are some of the major obstacles that you face? It could be like rowing athlete related. It could be outside of it, right? Because you said you coach kids to adults. Kids have parents, and and kids' parents should be like, Timmy. I feel like Timmy should get the spot in the 1v8, and it's like Timmy's 2K was 12 minutes. Timmy can't row in the 1v8 if his 2K is 12 minutes. Like I understand Timmy's a very strong technical rower. His technique looks really good. But if his 2K takes 12 minutes, I can't put him in a boat.
Nailed it in terms of everyone's a little bit different. right? And even though if you read a lot, if you read psychology books or even the self-help book, I'm actually reading a book called Attached right now. Highly
Good book.
recommend. Oh, you already know it? Yeah,
Yeah,
really
love the
good
book.
book. Just understanding of how we kind of, our attachment personalities, right? With our people. There are generalizations, right? Where we're not as unique at times. At the same time, we are unique, right? So, there are situations where, I currently coach like 10 juniors, and I'd say every single one of them needs to be coached differently. And that's the hard thing because you can't coach 10 individuals when you coach a team, right? Um, but you can communicate 10 different ways individually. So you gotta find that, you gotta play that dance. Like I have one kid who he really wants to be an Olympian, I can tell. But my God, that guy deals with so much anxiety of just he wants to be really good right now. He's also 14. So, like, you know what I mean? It's just um great kid. Really good kid, but when you give him technical feedback, it's like I suck, I suck, I suck. That's what he's hearing, right? And so you gotta be careful with that. Whilst other kids, they need to be kind of pegged down a little bit, right? Because they're gonna be like, no, I'm actually really good. Coach is just kind of seeing this side of me, right? And so I think it's the challenge of trying to find consistently that sort of communication, right? And find a way to kind of dance that dance, right? From with each person, which it can just be really hard because sometimes you're also not feeling great. You're a human being, right? And so sometimes you don't want to you're just gonna say something because that's natural to you. And then that doesn't work on the athlete, or the athlete that actually pushes the athlete back. So you just have to, I do think coaches could learn a lot from theater performers or actors. Not to say that we have to be fake in any way, but the way we have to treat ourselves when we are in a coach bill or we are in a coach setting, we have to really just have a game face on. And that's hard. I think not enough coaches um, kind of see that and they let their own life stuff get in the way of their how they coach that day, which is normal. It's a very human element, but unfortunately, coaching can't be that because you have to be so careful with how you communicate, right? Because an athlete needs to hear something. Sometimes an athlete will only listen to you if they first hear a compliment, right? It's like you're doing a really good job of this. However, it's leading to this. Yeah. And some kids don't need that. Some people need to be, sworn at a little bit, because that's just how they trigger it, right? Some people need to laugh. Some people don't enjoy laughing, right? There's just so many different things. Um, and then, the other thing I was just going to say is is dealing with the fact that sometimes when things don't go as planned, right? For example, especially when I coach working professionals, they don't always can stick to the training plan, right? Because life is in the way. And
100%.
then they don't get the results they want, right? Because life is getting in the way of that. And just sometimes even they stick to the training plan and it's not working. And that leads to a lot of doubt sometimes of well, am I the reason this is happening? All this stuff. Obviously, you're playing a big part in that, but what's actually happening? How can I actually do that? And I guess dealing with that sort of stuff of just what's the actual issue, diagnosing the issue, right? And how can we solve the issue? Because sometimes and is the issue actually solvable, right? Or maybe people have just hit their athletic peak, right? That's it can be a thing, right? And it's rarely that the answer is there is no answer, but just always trying to when you hit that wall, when an athlete hits that wall, how do you as a coach handle it? Because Some coaches are going to be like, okay, move on to the next athlete, and that's fine, fair enough, you know. Especially if they're dealing with like 50 athletes. Like if you're running a college team and you're dealing with 50 athletes, fair enough. One athlete hits the wall, but you're still winning, you know, NCAA titles or IRA titles. It's like that's kind of just how it be, right?
Right.
But then you don't always learn from that, right? And it may lead to failures down the road. We don't know. So it's just that constant evaluation and never getting too high or too low as a coach. And always kind of, so that's like the second point I was making, and then being the first point being is um just always like being ready to like you've got to be adaptable. You've got to be adaptable. You got to be, and that's hard, right? That's definitely a hard thing of just consistently being like, all right, dude, you know, it's okay. It's all good, you know, like this. And then to the next guy, you're going to be like, come on, we got to get going. And you just, you know, that constant change of personality because you're dealing with a different person is just, it's consistent, you know, it's tough. It's tough on a coach. And I don't think, yeah, it's just tough. Yeah.
Interesting. I promise you a time cap, so we're reaching that time cap. But I'm gonna drop this tidbit in here because I want to have you back on this episode for back on the podcast for a later date and time. But a theory and question I want you to think about until then is you mentioned being adaptable, and I wanted to inquire further, not right now, further later, uh, on examples or ways that you have to be adaptable versus the population that you're training of like master and adult versus like junior and what that looks like and how you have to adapt your adaptability, if you will, based off the population that you're working with and what's going on. But I'll leave it there. That's a answer for another episode. I did want to say so something I do let all my guests do is I get to let them name their episode that they have on the podcast, which is funny because I still haven't come up with a name for my own podcast. But what would you like to name this episode? Your phone doesn't like to record the first like three words, so say that all again.
Still thinking. Let's say Crazy Scotsman talks about rowing,
I'm gonna make
and
it. I'm gonna make it a little shorter and just call it the Crazy Rowing
yes, you
Scotsman.
got to, yeah, something Crazy Scotsman, you know, or Crazy Scotsman yells at me for 20 minutes. Um,
The Crazy Rowing Scotsman.
Thumbnail, and I can do a face if you want, so it's the thumbnail of me screaming at you.
Make a
Um,
make the face, and hold it, hold it. Make it crazier. There we go. There we go. Okay.
there All right. So there's your thumbnail. Crazy Scotsman yells at you. That's the maybe they'll be disappointed, but or I can yell at you for however much time you have left. I don't know.
No, I'm good. You don't need to raise your voice at me.
Okay.
Nor you don't need to trigger me this early.
All right.
Um, all right, dude. I will conclude the recording of this podcast. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you, as the viewers, got to learn something about both the sport of rowing as well as quality coach within the realm and sport of rowing. Because I think that's important of how to recognize a quality coach in your field. If your coach isn't, lifelong learning, if your coach is not willing to change or have like a pliable perspective, if they're not adaptable, I think adaptable is a good word that we've used within this podcast episode, that it's kind of like hard to have faith in that coach. But yeah, guys, thank you for watching. You guys are great. And obviously, hopefully I'll see you guys in the next episode.